Give thanks to the Mother Gaia, give thanks to the Father Son, give thanks to the healing garden where the Mother and the Father are one. Give thanks to you, we do give thanks. Give thanks to you, we do give thanks. Preparing one's own herbal medicines is perhaps one of the most satisfying experiences that one can undertake. Whether one gathers their plants wild or grows them in their garden, a healing occurs right from the start. As one observes the cycles of nature, one learns more about the greater cyclic nature of all things, thus bringing about a greater understanding of one's part in the whole scheme of life. It is unfortunate that for most of us, the art of preparing herbal medicines is no longer passed down from generation to generation. Instead, it has become an esoteric art practiced only by wise women and sophisticated herb companies. This is unfortunate because the truth is that most herbal remedies can be easily prepared in your own kitchen. My hope is that this video will motivate you and empower you to take back your right and responsibility to heal yourself. I would recommend to you that you either grow or gather your own herbs in the wild. Over 80% of the herbs in this country have been imported. If you know about the circle of poison that affects food, this means that pesticides and herbicides that have been banned in this country are still shipped overseas. Then they're used on our foods and herbs that are shipped back into this country. Another problem is that all commercial herbal warehouses, even those storing organic herbs, are required to be fumigated several times a year. Herbs have also started to be irradiated, and there's no labeling on herbal products to warn you of this. It's fortunate that we now have the availability of many Chinese herbs, but a problem with this is that all the herbs shipped from China are required to be sprayed while still on the boats. Another potential problem of buying your herbs is that often lesser expensive herbs are substituted for more expensive herbs. Another problem is the wrong herb collected at the wrong time. Another problem is herbs that have been dried incorrectly, and often herbs are stored incorrectly. In most health food stores, you'll see that herbs are stored in glass containers out in the light. This destroys many of the healing properties of herbs. The first remedy that we will prepare is mint and elder tea. This is a very old and very popular European recipe. When we gather the mint, we want to gather it in early summer before it flowers. When we gather mint, we want to cut the plant back to about 4 inches above the ground. Then we'll garble each stem, which means we'll remove the leaves and make sure that you discard any leaves that are discolored. Mint is diaphoretic, which means that it induces sweating. It is also carminative, which means it helps us to expel gas. Mint is used to break fevers, and it has been found to be antiseptic. Next, we're going to gather horehound so that we can make a horehound cough syrup. Horehound is a perennial herb, and it's a member of the mint family. It likes sandy soil and lots of sun. When we gather horehound, we want to cut the plant back to about 4 inches above the ground. Horehound is a popular remedy for coughs and other types of respiratory illness. It aids the body in expelling mucus. You will also want to garble the horehound, which means you will strip the leaves off the stem and discard any parts of the plant that are discolored. Now we'll gather French tarragon in order to make an herbal wine vinegar. French tarragon is preferred over Russian tarragon. Tarragon is aromatic, so it would lose some of its properties during drying. This is a good reason why it would be good to preserve it in vinegar. Tarragon is diuretic, and it stimulates the body and helps it to flush out toxins. Tarragon also stimulates the appetite. It helps with the digestion of foods, and it helps with indigestion. Tarragon will also help to expel worms. We're going to make a tincture with the borage plant. Borage has been called the herb of gladness. You want to gather the leaves in the early summer before the plant flowers. Borage strengthens the adrenal glands, making it good for people who have been treated with cortisone or other steroids. Borage is good for stress, and it can be used over an extended period of time. This is St. John's wort, and today we're going to gather the flowers in order to make St. John's wort oil. St. John's wort flowers around the summer solstice, and you'll want to gather the flowers just as they come into full bloom, and you want to gather them in the morning as soon as the dew has dried. St. John's wort is anti-inflammatory, and it's good for the healing of the skin. It can be used for all types of wounds, bruises, burns, sunburns. It's also good for varicose veins and sciatica. We'll want to pick the flowers and fill a jar as full as we can with the flowers in order to make an oil. This is comfrey, and we'll be gathering the leaves in order to make a poultice. Comfrey is also called knit bone, and it contains a constituent called allantoin, which is a cell proliferant, meaning that it speeds cell growth. The root of comfrey is the strongest in this ingredient, even though all parts of the plant contain it. Comfrey is used for wounds, bruises, burns, sprains, boils, and all other types of skin disorders. Comfrey helps prevent scar tissue, but when you have deep wounds, you have to make sure that it's not going to heal skin over an infection. A good way to prevent this is to use it with golden seal. There's some question as to some of the alkaloids contained in comfrey and its safety for internal use. These alkaloids are strongest in the root. They are also found in the new leaves, and they are weakest in the mature leaves. When you're gathering your own herbs, you're going to want to make sure that you have absolutely positive identification. An experienced guide is probably your best bet, but there's also many good books available right now. You're going to want to make sure that you're collecting the right herb at the right time of day and at the right time of year. You want to make sure that you gather your herbs at the right time of day, and for most herbs this means gathering them in the early morning hours as soon as the dew has dried. Rain washes away many of the aromatic oils in herbs, so if this is what you're after, you're going to want to wait to gather your herbs several days after a rain. Please try to avoid any areas that have been contaminated by pesticides or any other types of contamination. You're going to want to avoid gathering along roadsides, power lines, along marshes or farm fields that have been sprayed. You're going to want to avoid forests that have been sprayed for gypsy moth. And also, dogs can pass parasites to people, so if your plants look yellowed, you'll want to avoid gathering from those areas. Always gather your plants with stewardship in mind. This means respectfully gathering your plants. Many cultures have rituals around the gathering and use of plants. Native Americans like to thank the plant and make an offering of either tobacco or cornmeal. What is important is that there's an exchange of energy. You'll want to increase plant populations, not decrease them. This means carefully thinning, replanting seeds and rootlets. Try not to take more than 1/3 of the plants in any one area, and also do not gather endangered species. You want to make sure that you gather your plants when the energy is most concentrated in the part of the plant that you want. This means that different plant parts will be gathered at different times of year. For gathering barks and twigs, most people gather them in the spring. This is when the rising sap enriches those parts of the plant. However, some people prefer to gather them in the fall. You're going to want to make sure that your shrub or tree is mature enough to withstand the harvesting. It's best if you can use a recently downed tree. In general, the bark from roots is the strongest, then the bark from the trunk, and then the bark from branches. You'll want to gather leaves when they are the most lush and before the plant has flowered. In general, you do not take all the leaves from a plant, however you can when you're also gathering the roots, and also try to leave your leaves as whole as possible. Flowers are gathered when they're in bloom, but not yet fully expanded. Fruits and berries are gathered when they're fully ripe, but before decomposition starts to occur. Roots are gathered when the above-ground growth has died. For most biennial plants, this means during the fall of the first year, and for most other plants, it means after 2 or 3 years of growth. You're going to want to process your herbal medicines as soon as possible after gathering your plants. Try to start out with simple remedies first. Use only your best ingredients. Your end product's only going to be as good as the ingredients that you use to prepare it. Make sure that you have chosen the right herb and the right method of preparation. Your method of preparation should preserve as many of the healing qualities as possible. You're going to want to make sure that you prepare your herbal medicines carefully and lovingly. They may be ineffective or not work correctly if they are not prepared in the right way. You want your herbal medicines to be absorbed, and in general, herbs are best absorbed when they're in solution. We'll talk more about this in the kitchen. In general, there are 3 bases for making herbal medicines. These are water, alcohol, and oil. With water, we make infusions, decoctions, compresses, fomentations, baths, eye washes, and many other preparations. With alcohol, we can make tinctures and liniments, and with oils, we can make infused oils, salves, and ointments. Water is called the universal solvent. Both our bodies and plant bodies digest in a water base, and for many medicinal herbs, water is the perfect solvent for making available the constituents. Volatile herbs are easily extracted into water, and for many aromatic or volatile herbs, a cold water infusion would be the ideal method of preparation. It is best to use clear, soft water, rainwater, or distilled water. Limestone or other hard waters are undesirable. The easiest way to make an infusion is in a canning jar. We're going to make an infusion with peppermint and elder. This is an old-time remedy for colds and flu. We'll take our freshly picked herbs and put them into a canning jar. Then we're going to boil our water. And as soon as we've filled it up, we want to put the top on immediately. That's because these are aromatic herbs, and some of the oils will be lost with the steam. We're going to want to let this sit for 20 to 30 minutes. For this recipe, I used about an ounce of the peppermint and the elder combined. This is a strong infusion. An official infusion, according to the pharmacopoeia, is 1 teaspoon dried or 2 teaspoons fresh herb per 1 cup of boiling water. However, most medicinal herbalists now make their infusions much stronger than this. You may also choose to use a cold water infusion. You'd want to use a cold water infusion with herbs that are highly aromatic. You may also want to use a cold water infusion when the desired principles are easily soluble at a colder temperature. An example of this is slippery elm bark. You may also want to use a cold infusion when an herb has a constituent that is not desired, which is not easily dissolved by water at a lower temperature. Saffron and sassafras root bark is an example of this. Cold infusions are nice to make sun teas. In general, to make a cold infusion, you put your herb into a jar, add cold water, and let it sit for 8 to 12 hours. Now we're going to prepare a decoction. We're going to make a natural ginger ale. Decoctions are usually used for roots and barks. Using this method, you'll lose the volatile or aromatic essences of herbs and also some of the water-soluble vitamins, but a decoction is used to extract mineral salts and bitter principles. In general, a decoction is stronger than an infusion. They're particularly good for bad tasting herbs and for when you want to administer herbs to children and animals, because in general you drink a smaller amount than an infusion. To make the ginger ale, we're going to take the ginger root, peel it, and then cut it into small pieces. To make a decoction, first we prepare our herb. In this case, it's fresh ginger root. Then we're going to place our herb into a pot. Then we're going to add cold water. And we're going to bring it to a boil. When a decoction is reduced by 1/2, this is called a regular decoction, and it is when it's reduced to 1/4 of the original volume, that's called a double decoction. For this recipe, I'm using a root about this size for 1 quart of water. I'm going to let it boil about 30 minutes until the water is dark yellow. Our elder and mint infusion is done now. You can see that it's turned a nice dark color. We're going to want to strain it. I like to use a muslin strainer. Most herbalists recommend that you avoid contact with metal when preparing herbal medicines. The average dose for an infusion like this would be 1/2 cup, 3 to 4 times a day. It tastes really good just by itself with the mint in it, but you can also add honey if you like. Another preparation that we can make using water is a syrup. We can use syrups to coat the throat and to keep herbs in contact with the throat. In order to make a simple syrup, we can use infusions, decoctions, or expressed herb juices. You'd want to use 4 to 8 ounces of honey or sugar per 1 cup of liquid. You'd bring it to a boil to dissolve the honey or sugar, then cool it. You'll want to store this in a refrigerator, and in general, syrups will keep for 3 to 6 months. If you want to preserve it for longer than this, you can add a tablespoon of brandy or another spirit to help preserve it. Now we're going to make a horehound cough syrup. You're going to want to take 1 ounce of horehound leaves in a 1-pint canning jar. Then we're going to fill the jar with boiling water. And we're going to let this infuse for about 15 minutes. Now to finish making the ginger ale, we're going to take honey, pour it into our jar, and make sure that you use a jar that can withstand boiling water. Then we're going to strain our ginger water. And you can see that it's turned a nice dark yellow color now. And then we're going to finish filling the container with carbonated or naturally sparkling water. You have a homemade ginger ale that's healthy. If you don't drink your infusions or decoctions right away, make sure that you refrigerate them. And if they show any signs of deterioration, make sure that you throw them away. After your horehound is infused for about 15 minutes, you're going to want to strain it. It'd be a good idea to strain it into a measuring cup because you're going to need to know just how much liquid you have. So we have a cup and a half. You're going to want to add 2 times as much honey as you have liquid. So we'll be adding 3 cups of honey. You're going to want to just heat this gently and stir to mix it thoroughly. Once the honey's dissolved, just take another minute. Now we're going to pour it into our syrup container. Make sure that your containers are clean, and you want to store your syrup in the refrigerator. You'll take 1 teaspoon at a time. This is good for coughs, other respiratory ailments, and it helps your body to expel mucus. A poultice is the application of fresh or dried plant material directly to the skin. Fresh is better, and if you use fresh, you're going to want to grate, mash, or puree it. If you use dried plant material, make sure that you rehydrate it with boiling water. A poultice is used to soothe and heal tissue. They're used to stimulate circulation, and often herbs such as ginger or cayenne are added in order to promote good circulation. A poultice can also be used to warm and relax muscles and to draw out toxins. To make a comfrey poultice, you want to pick fresh comfrey leaves, rinse them quickly under cold running water, shake them dry, put them in a blender. Then we're going to want to add a little bit of distilled water. You could do this in a mortar and pestle, but it's much easier and quicker in a blender. You're going to want to blend until you have a thick paste. For hairy herbs like comfrey, you might want to apply a layer of olive oil onto the skin first, or you can put the comfrey inside of the gauze and apply it. But I'm just going to make an ordinary poultice. Take the pureed plant material, apply it directly to the skin, and cover it with gauze. You can either cover this now with a towel, or you could roll it with an ace bandage. Another easy poultice to make would be with plantain. Plantain has been called nature's Band-Aid, and it's readily found just about everywhere. To make a poultice with plantain, you can just pick the leaves, chew them, and apply them directly to the skin. It's good for impurities, cuts, scrapes, stings, and all types of bites. Other herbs to use for drawing out impurities include the comfrey and marshmallow. If you want to make a poultice for muscle problems, you can use lobelia, lady's slipper, or catnip. Another water preparation that you may want to try is an herbal bath. If you choose to use this method, I'd recommend that you don't use the method that's advised in many herbals. Here they tell you to take the herbs and place them into cheesecloth or a muslin bag, and then to place it under the faucet in your bath. If you want a truly medicinal bath, then you're going to want to make a strong infusion. An old-time European remedy for cold and flu is a thyme bath. To make this, you use 2 cups of dried thyme, pour 2 quarts of boiling water over it, cover your container, and let it steep 10 to 15 minutes. Then you're going to want to strain it into your bathtub. When you take a thyme bath, not only do you absorb the essential oils through your skin as your pores open from the hot water, but you also inhale them. Another water preparation is the steam inhalation. To make a steam inhalation, you're going to want to use herbs that are highly aromatic, such as chamomile or thyme. Today we're going to make a chamomile steam inhalation. This is good for sinus infections, skin conditions, and sore eyes. You're going to want to put about a handful of chamomile flowers in a bowl. Cover with boiling water. You want to quickly cover your head and breathe in the vapors for about 10 minutes. So you want to use this for 10 minutes 2 times a day. Another method of herbal preparation is tincturing. One can make tinctures with alcohol, vinegar, or glycerin. The advantages to alcohol tinctures are that they can be stored for many years. One only needs to use very small amounts, 5 to 15 drops at a time. They act very rapidly. Some alkaloids and resins are soluble only in alcohol and not in water. Tinctures are good for traveling, and they're very good for horrible tasting herbs. Tinctures that are made from fresh plants are completely different than tinctures made from dried plants. And in general, the tinctures that you'll find in health food stores are made from dried plants. So this is a good reason why you might want to make your own fresh plant tinctures. One of the potential disadvantages to tinctures is the use of alcohol by recovering alcoholics. One of the arguments in favor of tinctures is that one only uses maybe 5 to 15 drops at a time, and that if you want to, you can dissipate some of this by dropping it into hot water, which helps dissipate the alcohol. Now we're going to make a barrage tincture. To make a tincture, you're going to gather your fresh plant material, go through it and discard any discolored leaves. Then we're going to tear the leaves up. In general, you'll tear, chop, or macerate your plant material, except for flowers, when you're making a tincture. Then you're going to fill the jar up completely with your plant material, as full as you can get it. A lot of people like to make their tinctures according to the moon. If you want to do this, you'll start your tincture on the new moon, and you'll wait 6 more weeks and draw it out or filter it out on the full moon, using the drawing power of the moon. Now, as soon as our container is filled up with the plant material, we're going to fill it up again with vodka. In general, for most tincture recipes, it seems to be best to use 100 proof. I like to use vodka basically because it's clear, readily available, and cheap. And it comes in 100 proof. Now, this barrage tincture will be good for all types of stress conditions, and it feeds the adrenal glands, which probably makes it a good herb for just about anybody in our modern society to use. You can see I've filled up this jar just about as full as it can get with the barrage leaves. Now I'm going to fill it up again with vodka. And after about a couple days, you want to check your jar, and you're probably going to have to fill it up a little bit again. If you're using fresh material, you only need to shake your tinctures occasionally. But if you're making a tincture with dried plant material, you should shake it daily. When you make a tincture, it's a good idea to tell what plant you have in here, what part of the plant, what tincturing material you've used, and put a date on so that you'll make sure that you strain it out at the right time. Now I'm going to let this sit for 6 weeks, and I'll have a barrage tincture. Now I have a tincture that I started a few weeks ago with St. John's wort, and you can see that it's turned a beautiful red color, which means that the hypericin has been extracted into the vodka. In general, you want to avoid using metal when you're making herbal preparations. So when I'm going to filter this out, I'm going to use cheesecloth. You can also use coffee filters if you like, and they have lots of choices now, and I recommend to you to try to get either the naturally colored coffee filters or the chlorine-free coffee filters. Now we're going to strain this tincture. I'm using 4 layers of cheesecloth. You want to make sure that you squeeze out your plant material, because there'll be a lot left in here that you don't want to waste. The easiest way to fill your tincture bottles, and I'd recommend that if you can, you get amber-colored tincture bottles to protect them, is with a glass turkey baster. Now you've got your own St. John's wort tincture that will last for years. There are many ways that you can use a tincture. You can add the drops to water or hot or cold teas. You can add to water and use tinctures in compresses or foot baths or other types of external applications. Or you can add a tincture to oils to make ointments or to cocoa butter to make suppositories. A liniment is a tincture that is used externally only. Traditionally, people have made liniments with rubbing alcohol, but I would recommend to you that you only use food-grade alcohol, as the skin is a permeable membrane. Liniments are used for sprains, strains, sore muscles, and arthritis. You can also make a tincture with vinegar. The acidic acid in vinegar acts as a solvent and a preservative. Herbal vinegars can be used in marinades and in salad dressings. You can use red wine vinegars, rice vinegars, apple cider vinegars, but in general you should avoid using synthetic vinegars. There are many different herbs that you can use to make an herbal vinegar. Today we're going to use tarragon. You can also use rosemary, oregano, or chives. I'm going to take the freshly picked tarragon, put it in your canning jar, and fill your jar up with red wine vinegar. If you must use a metal cap, put a piece of wax paper between the vinegar and the cap, as it would often rust it. You can use a canning lid, or if you choose to use a fancier bottle, such as something like this, you can use cork. I'm going to let this sit for about 2 weeks. Then I'll strain it out, and I'll pour it back into a fancier bottle with a fresh sprig of tarragon. And now I have French tarragon red wine vinegar. You can also use glycerin to make a tincture. Glycerin is a solvent and a preservative. It doesn't work on as many constituents as water or alcohol, and it doesn't dissolve and mix with resins or oils. but it does help to preserve volatile oils. Wine will also dissolve plant substances that are normally insoluble in water. Wine is also less stimulating to the body than high-proof spirits, but wine in general is not as good a solvent as high-proof spirits are. Most aperitifs were originally digestive drinks made with herbs such as wormwood and aniseed. Perhaps you would like to make your own digestive aperitifs. There are basically two types of herbal oils. They are essential oils and infused oils. Essential oils are derived by either distillation or by chemicals. In general, if your essential oils are not very expensive, then you can assume that they're derived through the chemical extraction method, and I would recommend to you that you only buy essential oils that are derived through distillation. The type of oil that we'll make today is an infused oil. We're going to make St. John's wort oil. To make this, we want to get freshly picked St. John's wort flowers. You want to pick these on a dry, sunny day, just as soon as they have opened. You want to buy a good quality oil. This means an oil that has not been bleached or fumigated. You'll probably want to go to a good health food store to buy your oils. I've gotten a virgin olive oil. You'll fill your clean jar with the St. John's wort flowers, and then we're going to fill it again with the olive oil. To extract St. John's wort oil, you have to let it sit in the sun. You're going to want to let it sit in the sun for 2 to 6 weeks. In about 2 to 6 weeks, your St. John's wort oil should have a nice dark red color like this. The only problem with making infused oils is the possibility of them forming mold. In general, the ways to avoid this are to make sure that your jar is completely dry, that your herb material is completely dry when you put it in, and that you fill the container all the way to the top with oil. You want to make sure after a few days that the oil is still up to the top, and if it's not, you'll want to fill it up again. If it does form some mold and it's only on the top, you can scoop it off and add more oil, but if the mold is throughout your whole mixture, you'll need to discard it and start over again. To preserve your oils, once you've strained them, you can use vitamin E capsules, 1 or 2 per ounce of oil, or you can use tincture of benzoin or tincture of myrrh. That would be 1 drop per ounce of infused oil. Now we're going to prepare an ointment. An ointment is a semi-solid preparation usually made with an oil infusion. The ointment that we'll make today is going to be made from an oil that I've had infusing for several weeks. It contains St. John's wort, which is skin healing, comfrey, which is soothing and healing to the skin, plantain, which is astringent and soothes pain, and lavender, which helps with bringing circulation to the skin for faster healing. To make an ointment, we want to take our infused oil and we're going to strain it through cheesecloth into a measuring cup. And I want to make sure that you squeeze out any oil that's left in your plant material. Now we want to find out exactly how much oil we have. We've got 1.5 cups. I'm not going to make all of this into an ointment right now, just a couple ounces. What we're going to do is we're going to grate 1 tablespoon of beeswax for each ounce of oil that we want to turn into ointment. We'll take 2 ounces of oil, put it into our saucepan, now we're going to put the stove on the lowest heat that we can. In fact, you need so little heat to do this that you can even use a candle flame.
Turn the stove down as low as we can.
And then we're going to measure 2 tablespoons of grated beeswax. Now you're going to want to stir this constantly. It'll just take a couple minutes to melt the beeswax. It's almost melted already. And if you haven't made this before and you're just not sure about the consistency, you can take a sampling onto your spoon and put it in the freezer, and you'll be able to tell right away if it's the right thickness. If you make this and it's not the right thickness, it's very easy to fix. If it's too thin, you can add a little more beeswax. If it's too thick, you can add a little more oil.
This is almost melted.
The beeswax is melted now, and we're going to pour it into clean, dry jars. And you're going to want to let this cool before you put the caps on the jar. You'll want to prepare your herbs for drying as soon as possible after gathering them. You'll want to protect them from wind, heat, and dust, and take them out of direct sunlight as soon as possible. In general, you'll only wash roots, and these will be washed quickly under cold water, patted dry, and then let them air dry for a little bit before you put them into your dehydrator. In general, you'll only slice roots, and these you'll want to slice them longitudinally or diagonally because you're going to want to expose as much of the surface area as possible for drying. Small roots can be left whole. You can make drying racks out of cheesecloth or muslin. You'll want to avoid metal. When you dry herbs, you want to spread them in a single layer and try to make sure that no parts are touching. You want to dry your herbs gently, and in general, you're not going to want to dry them at over 105 degrees. I like to use a dehydrator because with using a dehydrator, you can control the temperature. This is the dehydrator that I use for drying my herbs. With the dehydrator, my herbs are dried quickly and I can control the temperature. This is especially important in areas that have high humidity. This type of dehydrator is made up of a series of racks with a blower that blows up through the center of the racks. There's lots of different types of dehydrators in the market, and they range in price from about $75 to $150. Heat, light, air, and bacterial action can all dissipate the healing qualities of herbs, as can storing them in metal and plastic. It's probably best to store your herbs in an airtight glass container because dried herbs can reabsorb moisture. You can also use airtight wood, tin, and ceramic. You want to store your herbs as whole as possible, and a large opening makes it easier to fill and remove herbs. If you use a metal lid, place a piece of wax paper over the jar before screwing on the lid. Herbs are best stored in a dry, dark, cool place out of the direct sunlight. You'll want to label all your jars with your herb name, plant part, and date, and re-inspect them occasionally and re-dry them if necessary. Most herbs should only be stored for a year, and herbs are considered fresh during this time. However, roots and barks remain potent for many years. One way that you can prepare herbs is by powdering them. You can put powdered herbs in capsules, make tablets or suppositories. You can sprinkle them over food or use them in a snuff. You can powder your herbs in a mortar and pestle, or you can use a Japanese surabachi, or you can use a coffee and spice grinder. To powder your herbs in a spice grinder, just put the herbs in the grinder. And they're ground. You can use the powder to make a capsule. Capsules are good for bad-tasting herbs or for herbs that need to be taken over a long period of time. In general, capsules act much more quickly than pills or tablets. To make a capsule, you want to powder your herb finely, separate the two pieces of the capsule, slide them both through your powder, and when both ends are filled, you want to close your capsule back up. You want to store your capsules in a cool, dark place. If it's too warm and hot, your capsules will lose moisture and become dry and brittle. If it's too moist, your capsules will get sticky and disintegrate. Capsules can be dipped in water or vegetable oil for easier swallowing, and vegetarians will want to avoid capsules made with animal gelatin. There are some disadvantages to using capsules that I think you should know about. Some active ingredients are not easily absorbed when taken in capsules. Since you don't taste the herb, you don't have the neurological sensation that seems to be very important with the use of bitter herbs. Also, for capsules, herbs must be dried, possibly losing important constituents. Many commercial capsules are also adulterated with ingredients such as whey and cornstarch. However, capsules are very convenient to use. Another herbal preparation that you might choose to make is a cachet. You can make a cachet with rice paper, which is made from rice and tapioca powder and found in an Oriental food store, or you can use starch paper, which is made from potato starch, corn starch, soybean oil, and water. To make a cachet, you take your cachet paper, put the powdered herb in the middle, then you either roll or fold it up. If you want, you could moisten it with water and swallow it quickly. You may also choose to smoke herbs for healing purposes. Herbs that are commonly used for respiratory ailments include coltsfoot, rosemary, mullein, and chamomile. For a smoker's cough, you may choose to smoke horehound, hyssop, coltsfoot, or marshmallow leaves. For insomnia and restlessness, you may smoke mugwort, catnip, or wild lettuce. A general dose is 6 to 10 inhalations for a single treatment. You'll want to inhale fully, hold it, and exhale fully. A word of caution about smoking herbs. Burning plant material can result in smoke particles and tar in the lungs. Use with care. Another type of herbal healing that you may choose to use is the use of herbal sleeping pillows. This is a simple type of aromatherapy. To make herbal sleeping pillows, you want to fill a bag with herbs. The herbs that you may use are balm, hops, St. John's wort. You can add rose petals and orange blossoms for smell. For crying babies, you can use chamomile and hops. You'll want to make sure that your herbs are dried correctly. And to use your herbal sleeping pillow, you'll just crush the herbs in your hand and then place the pillow near your nose while you sleep. Another simple way to prepare herbs is called an electuary. With an electuary, we take either honey, maple syrup, or peanut butter, stir in your powdered herb, and eat it. This is an easy way to give strong-tasting herbs to children or to animals. This concludes our video on making herbal preparations. I'd like to recommend to you to watch this video several times and to take notes. Start experimenting now with these different procedures so that if and when the occasion arises that you need to use them quickly, you will be familiar with the different procedures and familiar with the different actions of the herbs. If you want more detailed information on specific herbs, I invite you to purchase my video on Native American herbology, where I discuss in depth 9 of my favorite herbs. Or you can purchase one of the many excellent books available on herbal healing. I wish you many hours of enjoyment with your herbal experiments. Have a lot of fun. Give thanks to the Mother Gaia, give thanks to the Father Son. Give thanks to the healing garden where the Mother and the Father are one. Give thanks to you, we do give thanks. Give thanks to you, we do give thanks. Give thanks to the Mother Gaia, give thanks to the Father Son. Give thanks to the